Now, our second stop is an area of forest on the Sandman's Trail that started from a very similar place as the first forest. So it was an even age stand of white pine that grew up out of an old pasture, very similar age to that first area. The difference is this area has seen that overstory of white pine harvested on multiple occasions. Individual trees were cut, groups of trees were cut, and as anywhere in the forest, when light is made available, when light is allowed to reach the forest floor, we see the forest fill that space with regeneration. As a result, we have multiple different generations of multiple different species of trees. We have white pine that has been retained in the overstory that are providing this amazing super dominant canopy structure, which are these amazing perch site for raptors and seed source for future generations of white pine. These are trees that will never be cut. These are trees that will be here forever. And as they grow, as they get even bigger, they will become complex. So they develop this complex bark structure, complex canopy structure, provide all these really interesting habitats for lichens and mosses and invertebrates. And even as they decline and die, they will provide really, really cool habitat and forest health benefits. Stuff like they'll become riddled with cavities, which are really important to about a third to a half of all of our forest species that utilize these holes in the trees in order to live, to raise their young, etc. And they will eventually become large diameter deadwood on the ground, deadwood, which is this incredibly important attribute in our forests. And we also see multiple generations of hemlock and also hardwoods. Forests, which are diverse in terms of composition and also in terms of structure with different sizes and ages of trees, are thought to provide a wider diversity of habitats for wildlife species, are thought to be more resilient to a changing climate, and are also thought to be more like what old forests are like, at a time when old forests are really underrepresented across our landscape. And you can think about this in a few different ways. So in terms of species diversity, there are different wildlife species that are associated with different tree and shrub species. There are also different wildlife species that are associated with different canopy layers. So in the case of forest birds, you might have certain birds that will nest in a dense understory layer, that will sing from a high canopy layer, and that will forage in the midstory of a forest in between those two layers. From a climate perspective, we don't totally understand the different ways that climate change is going to affect each of our tree species. And so having forests which are diverse is a really good way to sort of not put all of our eggs in one basket, to give our forest the tools that it needs to respond to climate change no matter what form it takes. This stand is a really great example of how we're trying to manage forests in a lot of different parts of Vermont. So we have these forests which are almost uniformly young, relatively simple, that lack qualities like big trees, like dead wood, like structural diversity that we might have seen in forests here 300 years ago. And we're trying to use management as a tool to help them develop those attributes sooner than they would naturally occur. This is an example of one of the many ways that we as humans can actually be a really positive influence on our forests, and also an example of how we can both use forest management as a tool to respond to the legacies of the past, and also to move into an uncertain future with the forest that we have.